and welcome to the Virtual Business Owners Network on Friday, the 18th of August 2023. And as a follow-up to our presentation last week on Slack, we now have Chris taking us to another level. Chris Wheeler is going to show us how to boost your productivity with Slack. So take it away, Chris.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Brilliant presentation from Vincent last week. The Idiot's Guide wasn't that idiotic. It was really cool. So I'm adding a bit of meat to the bones of that. When I do a presentation, I like to use analogies because it keeps it simple for everybody. So the way I'd look at Slack is like a community center for the group's conversations and activities. The different rooms are like activity spaces, which we can use as members to connect based on topics, or we can use them for potentially sharing job opportunities that we might see. There can be rooms for events. There can be rooms for industry news that we can share. And also on another group that I'm on, there is an Ask Me Anything section. So you can present for the entire group, and that's pretty good. Within each room, there are smaller breakout rooms like we have on Fridays in any case. And the way that the search function is working is like asking the community center receptionist to help you to find a past conversation or member quickly. So there's lots of automations. You could consider those to be like helpful staff members that take care of routine tasks like posting digests of popular links or announcing upcoming events. And you can have notifications that you can tailor. So basically, you only get alerted when necessary, just like attending events at the community center you're really interested in. So overall, Slack provides a virtual space for VBON, and it allows us to communicate, collaborate, and support each other in a really organized way that we can make fit our needs. So I think it's quite a flexible tool in that respect. So what I've done this morning is I've created this deck, which is like a top 10 tips of how we maybe can maximize productivity with the group. And this is actually the first time I've presented Slack in terms of a community presentation. It's normally from a business perspective. So I've tried to make it relevant to that. And okay, so we're going to talk about how to organize channels, how to use threads, how to customize our notifications, why search is a big friend, how we can automate a little bit, and what messages we can use and how we can mark them as important or not important. We can set working hours, so we're not slaves to it. We can decide what we want to do with it, and we can use, if we're a bit more advanced, we can use snippets. And an example of a snippet you'll see later on. And I've created some keyboard shortcuts that you can use to help you navigate through it pretty quickly, and how to integrate with other tools. So organizing channels. Channels are the heart of Slack. Without channels, there's nothing. Different rooms in the office building or community center that I've just talked about. Channels will help segment conversations. We can create different channels for different things. And as I mentioned, one-to-ones we can use, and equally there are integrations for things like Zoom. So we can actually completely communicate within the system. We can get expert advice, excuse me, and potentially we can help each other with things like funding and or business information. Threads within, excuse me, I need a drink of water. Conversations can get really cluttered. So we use threads to reply to specific messages, and we don't disrupt the main channel. So for example, somebody starts a conversation and somebody else answers. Instead of that being in the main line of the channel thread, we can take that offline, and you can continue the thread, rather like the chat in here, where we can talk to individual members and carry on with the conversation without disrupting the rest of the group. And it keeps everything very, very organized. We can customize notifications. So as we said, if you get busy on Slack, all you hear all day is ping, 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 ping as the thing goes off. And the more active you are on it, I see Amit shaking his head, then the more it's actually a problem for you. So you can customize channels with notifications, or notifications with channels, so you only get alerted when necessary, and that absolutely avoids any unnecessary distraction that you might encounter. And as I mentioned, search is the friend, like everything. The ability to be able to search things is really critical, and it's a really simple search system. And if you've got lots of different conversations, then it's actually, it can be a bit of a minefield, actually.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. So what you can do is you can use search to find messages, links, files, publications, or anything else you need, and that makes it a very, very big time saver. Tip 5 is to automate routines. So we can take advantage of Slack bots, and Slack bots in groups that I'm in that are not business groups can be used for actually introducing for one-to-ones. So we've got a group where the attendance was slowing down, you would say, and equally that the auditor, or the moderator didn't have time to make these connections. So we set up a bot, and every Monday there's an automatic introduction to another member, and you decide whether you want to hook up with that member. And I've had some great one-to-ones based on that. So I think that's Slack bots are really useful, and you can share information, share meetings, and you can actually deploy code as well. So if you want to create very much more advanced routines, you can use a bot to create that. And obviously the efficiency levels are really, really boosted, as you've seen with AI and all these other things. You know, they're designed to make your life simple, but you've got to understand them from the get-go. And deploying code is, I think, to the next level. You can mark important messages. So rather like Chrome or any browser that you use, you can bookmark things that you find really important, or channels that you find important. And it means you can easily find them later. There's a really good indexing system. And you can star them like you would in bookmarks in Chrome, where on the browser you see the URL, and to the right-hand side normally there is a star. And it means you can create a list of bookmarks and favorites. And obviously, the more active you are, the more likely it is you're going to need to use that function. As I said, the problem with Slack, as with all things email and everything else that we go through in communication channels on a day-to-day basis, is that we want to govern it, not it govern us. And Slack can really take over your life. Yeah, I was in a situation in a company in Berlin where I would guess probably 55% of my days was on Slack, doing one thing or another, whether it was sending reports to bosses, or whether it was actually communicating with customers through it, because emails were getting lost. So we decided to use Slack as a customer-facing channel. But you can create your own hours and your own working environment, so you can actually make it work for you and not have it govern you. And that manages expectations. And one thing for all businesses really is, when you create a relationship with somebody, if you don't manage expectations from the get-go, then pretty much it becomes a mess, and people expect you to be there when you're not going to be there, and disappointment normally follows. So in terms of creating a more healthy boundary, definitely don't be afraid to pull the plug. But remember, you have pulled the plug, and I'm sure Seamus would agree with that sentiment, that you know, whilst business is important, it's also important that it doesn't ruin your health at the same time. We can use snippets, and again, this gets a bit more technical, but actually it's not really. It sounds when you start looking at curly brackets and things like that, it looks like it's really high tech, but it actually isn't. You can create a snippet, yeah. So you can create automatic paragraphs that you'd auto respond to, yeah. So if somebody contacts you, you might have a message that says, "Hi, I'm sorry, I can't take your message right now. I'll come back to you in X amount of hours, days, whatever." So you could have, you know, like you have an out of office message. You can set up automations for things like that. And that obviously also saves time when you're talking about copying and pasting, because everything's already there for you. And it means you can create actually a library of these paragraphs, and just one click will send those to you. And what I've done here, and I don't expect you to read all this right now, is I've kind of broken it down into some shortcuts that are going to make your life very easy and very easy to understand. Things that might look quite simple, quite difficult, are actually quite simple. And command control pretty much does a lot of the functions, and then another button or another 2 buttons. And depending on whether you're on a Mac or whether you're on Windows, I've used command or control. So there's really, moving on from Vincent's analogy, this is kind of an idiot's guide to starting with how to navigate around the Slack channel. And we talked about integrations. There's 2,600 tools that you can integrate on Slack, and they range from Google Drive through to Airtable, which we use in VBON, and Alec uses. But you can integrate financial applications. You can integrate your project management tools with Asana and Trello. I have, I think, 60 integrations at the moment on most of my channels, and they range from automatic communications through to Excel spreadsheets, and actually my email in Outlook comes into my Slack. So I get a notification in Outlook actually through Slack. So Slack is my go-to tool, and because I've integrated the tools that work for me, I don't need any other tools open. Yeah, and it just makes life very, very simple. Yeah, and I can actually forward to Outlook, and I can forward from Slack to Outlook. So it's a two-way street. And what this does is it centralizes work streams, and especially for people who are interested in marketing and sales, HubSpot is a great integration, because everything that you've got in HubSpot in terms of a CRM system, a customer relationship management system, can be contained within Slack. And again, if you're customer facing, then clearly having that integration is really good. But you can also set up things with, there's a tool called Zapier, which is an automated tool that will take data and spit it out to wherever you want it, like a CSV on an Excel spreadsheet. And you can collect data and bring it all into Slack and organize it in a way that works for you. And again, that's the whole thing, is you need to make sure that it's something that works for you, and don't let it control you, basically. I've just put this in here because it's important, I think, especially with a community, more so with a business, but it's important that we be respectful and professional. You know, it's social media, you know, from experience, can be somewhat toxic at times. And I've seen instances on Slack where people have been calling other people out, even in networking groups, which is crazy. So what you don't want to see is offensive or discriminatory or inflammatory content. And again, with moderators on board, they should be reported to immediately if you see something untoward on there. And that pretty much covers the top 10 tips that I've got for you. I mean, we could be here all day with Slack and really drill down into a lot of the different aspects. And obviously, I'm happy to do that on a one-to-one basis. I can talk you through different topics and themes, but I think, again, trying not to overcomplicate it, I've gone for the basic 10 that I think would work for the VBON.
Can I say, Chris, thank you very much for a very concise thing, and I'm sure it's generated many questions. I will call you because I'm interested in finding out more, but I'm afraid I'm a bit of a trog when it comes to these. Just one quick question. How does Trello, for example, work in Slack now, just on a broad stroke? Because I'm
so basically Trello is a project management system, and actually I don't use Trello so much, or haven't used it. I use Asana, but it's the same basic principle, that the tasks that you've created in the project management system are flagged in Slack. Yeah, so there's an API, an application programming interface, that links the two together. And you're flagged. So if I set a notification that I've got to send an email to Vincent at 2 o'clock this afternoon, it will come up in my Slack as a notification. The bot will come up and say, you need to do this. Of course, it means you still got to go to Trello or Asana or whatever, but on the basis that it's one size fits all, then clearly it's a very, very simple system.
Yeah, actually, there's a native integration between them two.
There are. Yeah, there is.
And you can actually create Trello cards from inside Slack.
Yeah.
So it makes it very, very powerful. So Trello being a very good project management tool, really, really good.
Yeah.
And Slack being the best communication tool that's out there.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's true. There's no shadow of doubt in that.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, one thing that's really top notch with Slack is there are Bibles of information on help. Yeah, it's really intuitive. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand how to get help. FAQs, there is actually Slack communities that talk amongst themselves and will share tips and shortcuts and things like that. And I've had some really good automations on the back of that. So that again is another really good feature that you're not on your own, basically.
Chris, I have a question regarding this. I understand is the free part. This is not the paid feature part, right?
Yeah.
All of this can be done for the free Slack. Is this correct?
Yes, as far as I'm aware. I mean, I've only ever used either within a company that's paid for it, or as I do now, I use the free version. So there is a Slack for non-profit. Yeah, I'm not sure how that works in terms of an organization, but yeah,
you would have to be registered as an organization, probably.
I would think like a charity.
Yeah.
I don't think we get away with that. But I mean, again, from the perspective of for a group like this that isn't a business, day-to-day business group, I think it will do everything we want it to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think that the exciting thing is you can, if you spend some time with it, you can actually kind of make it fit you. Yeah. So you can create automations that really do work for you and customize it a lot. Yeah. But the free version, I think, is only limited by the fact that from memory, there's access to the most recent 90 days of message history, for example. And I believe there's only 10 integrations with the free version. You might need to check that because I'm not right up to date with it, but I think there's only 10 integrations you can use, which again, for this group would be fine.
It should be plenty, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. You just pick the top
to give you an example, and maybe pop in with a quick example of using Slack without using any fancy stuff. But I had a client that was an accountant, and as we know, they're all notoriously conservative, and hate to spend money. Sorry if I've offended you, John. But
go on.
I had this accountant that had 16 people working, and he was telling me that he spent his days going out talking to clients and making notes, and then he'd make these notes about the client requirements, and he'd send them to somebody. Then he'd type them up, send them to somebody, and then he's forever ringing to see if they got it, if they started. And he spent his days either meeting people or ringing around the various accountants to see where they were with something. So we just set him up with a Slack channel with all the team. And when he was out doing his notes, he photographed the notes and uploaded them into and assigned them to the person who needed to have them. Yeah. And then we set up a Slack bot, which is free, it's a stand-up bot. So every day at 11 o'clock, it would contact all the team and ask them, what are you working on? And are you experiencing any issues? Do you need any help?
Yeah, exactly.
And he got the whole within 10 minutes, he had everything that was going on within his company.
Yeah,
that's the power. That's really, and there was no training or learning. It's just the ability of the software.
Yeah, it's easy. It's difficult to explain how intuitive it is, because you go on it and you automatically know what to do. It's like you don't need training really. Like for the simple stuff, training I just went on it. I'd never seen it before, and I was like, okay, this does this and this and this. That's cool.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. Again, you can spend a lot of time tailoring it. Yeah, you can make it really work for you. And yeah, as I say, as good as bad, good or bad as you make it. There's going to be positives and negatives to everything. The thing with the Scale Island group that I'm in is that, as I think I said last week, there's people that dip in and out of it, and they're there, you know, maybe once a month or something, but they come in with something really positive. And for me, as somebody who loves to give advice away, I dump something. There's actually a help section, and I'll just dump an article up there, and you know, people will use it for what it is, especially around, obviously I've founded 5 companies, so it's more around startups and the challenges of startups and things like that, and things that I've experienced in the past. And, you know, people will take it how they want to take it, you know, but it's a good community.
The idea behind Slack was to get rid of emailing. That you send an email. The idea behind Slack, I remember at the beginning, was to get rid of the whole concept of emailing. You send an email and you have to wait for a response. With Slack, you get interaction immediately, response to people. You know, you can talk to people as you're working. That's what it was all about back then. Now you have things like Teams and things like that where you can talk to people as you work, you know. So you could be here, you're in Germany, and somebody could be in the United States, all doing something like post-production of a movie or something, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Chris, what would you recommend? Like, you've got much more experience, probably. Maybe Sean has too, but in using Slack, where should we start? Because we're not a business, we're a community. And for business, I can see this working for any size organization immediately. But for a community, what would be our first or our optimal channel?
I mean, I think it's a question of looking at things like the one-to-ones. I mean, that makes sense to me to have those in there. And as I said, using a bot to actually decide who's meeting with whom, and equally the help, because we all need help, right? So none of us knows everything. And as I said, it's something that you can just dip in and out of when you want to. So I think set up base channels that make sense for everybody. And then somebody will doubtless say, I think we should have this channel or that channel, and things like events, clearly. Yeah.
Are we limited to the number of channels that we can have? Can anybody go in there and say, I've got a brilliant idea for a channel, I'm just going to put that in there now?
I don't believe that you are, no. I'd need to check it in terms of the free version.
And if a channel is not being used, can you just delete it and you can just go again? Yeah. It's not going to just take up space where there's, you know, nobody's using it. Like,
no, I mean, what possibly I can do is create, I guess, another idiot's guide. I'm going to keep using that now. You've got me on that.
Yeah, it works.
I've set up so many Slack channels, but as I said, not for community, but maybe what we should do is create like a top 5 things we must do first. Yeah. So I think, you know, again, it's keeping it simple. I like keeping it simple. Yeah, we don't need to make this complicated, because if it's the more complicated it is, the more channels there are, I think the less people will use it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's, you know, it's kind of an idiot's guide. We're not using it for to make it more productive and to get more out of it, but like sometimes, as you say, less is more. Other than more is less. Like,
yeah, I mean, if you use it as a learning resource and think of it like that, yeah, then what do you want to learn, basically? Yeah, what makes sense?
I think that's it in essence, Chris. I think one of the key things you can use it for is a transfer of information, of ideas, you know, things that each of us might come across that we feel is worth sharing.
Yeah.
And rather than waiting till the Friday meeting, or maybe it becomes a discussion point at the Friday meeting if, you know, we share some things. So I think that's where it really works. As for managing the business, you know, I don't know about you guys, but my business is so small, it can be managed with a back of a cigarette packet and a pen, you know. So
yeah,
it's I don't need the power of computing that it has. But
I mean, I think what's going to be interesting is people start using it for this and then think, actually, I could use it for my business, and then take it into that, you know, and then you're going to need some more individualistic advice and training. And again, you probably don't need to pay for it because the communities are really heavy. One thing I think Vincent touched on last week was the kind of cross-pollination of groups. Yeah, so actually you can very easily send a link to someone and say join the group. Yeah, it's not rocket science to do that, and you might find people coming from other groups into it. And equally, there are some really good thought leadership groups on Slack, and you can just join. You just apply, and you don't need to be necessarily part of a group. You can ask to join a group. Yeah,
It's very, very good for something like post-production.
yeah,
You might make a version of First City.
yeah,
And the Christmas version of, they use that. What happens was you'd have one guy in the studio, the producer would be involved, the editor would be involved, sound would be involved, lights would be involved, and everything. You'd all be working on it together to produce the final version for television, you know?
yeah. And as with most things, you'll see things on other groups, and you'll think, actually, we could use that. So you get inspired by other people and what they've done, and you know, I'm learning all the time, everything. So it's like there's new things that come up and you think, oh wow, I could use that in business, or I could use that in the group. In chat, I've put a link for you guys, which I found, which is Slack groups for marketers and entrepreneurs, and it gives you a list of the top 20 or 25 groups that are most engaging. And again, from a network perspective, if you really want to get into the networking side, then clearly you're putting your business out there in another group, and potentially making it more global.
I've seen something only since yesterday, something called Discord.
Yeah.
It seems to be quite similar to Slack in a sense.
Yeah, there's actually been a lot of talk about how Discord is going to take over from Slack as an open source model.
Yeah.
Discord is very much AI driven. I'm on Discord,
Right.
but there are communities on there. Claudia, my business partner, has several channels for SEO, for example, because she's an SEO expert, and it's actually for other SEO experts just to talk about, you know, what's going on in the industry or blah blah blah, and she prefers that to Slack. You know?
Right. No, because I looked at it through Reddit. Somebody just posted on Reddit that I'm doing this with a group. You're welcome to join.
Yeah, Discord.
And I joined, and I thought this is very similar to Slack. I'll have to say this to Chris after the presentation.
Yeah,
I still think I prefer Slack.
I'm not sure. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm not sure that there's a download for Mac on Discord, because I use it. I've got a PC here, but I've got a MacBook, and I've only ever used it on a PC. And when I went on the other day, I didn't see a download for the Mac, so I might want to check that out as well.
Right, but it seems quite similar.
There's too much. When there's too much choice, though, I think that's where it's confusing. Like, where's everyone going to be? It's like when you turn up to a party and you're in the wrong party, kind of thing, isn't it? Like, just make it simple. Why do they have to come up with another one, like, just to confuse everybody?
Well, Discord came about again because it was specialisms, and started with AI, and it's more. I mean, it's a coder's dream to be in there because there's lots of coding information and things like that. And I think it's on a more technical level than Slack. Slack is maybe a more simplistic channel. And I think honestly, it's more intuitive, and I think there's probably more of a community support because it's been going so long. So Discord, all of these tools have got their place. I think you need to look at what works for you. As I said, don't make yourself fit the platform. Make the platform fit you.
I definitely think Slack is more beautiful. It's nicer. It's presented in a much better way.
I mean, even the early days of the beta of Slack was really nice. They started off with a really nice interface, and they've just developed it. So yeah, I tend to agree. And as I say, I think it's more technical with Discord. Yeah, and it's actually, there's also a big talk around people that are involved in creating AI for art and things like that. It's a design. There's a lot of designers on there. Yeah, which as a designer, it's nice to see, you know, different ideas and different things. But
we have a client that's it's a telecom company, and they provide telephone systems, but also they do the call software. They do all the HSE calls, so several 100,000 calls a month. But we're designing, we're working together on a platform that ties into your CRM, that handles everything. So if people are contacting you by WhatsApp, message, telephone, WhatsApp, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it all comes into the same place.
Yeah.
It's tied into your CRM, so you can, you know, connect it to your customers, and you answer them, whatever answer you're giving, or what if you're following up on a ticket or whatever, it gives the answer back in the same platform they contacted you with.
Yeah,
So
and I mean they've had, I think it started in 2012 or 13, Slack. So they've had 10 years to get this right. And the other platforms aren't there yet. Yeah, and again, if you find it works for you, why do you jump to something else? Yeah, I don't really see the point.
Can WhatsApp work through Slack?
That's a good question. I've never used it through Slack.
Right.
I don't think so, unless it's recent. Yeah, no.
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
But you
yeah.
can get Facebook, you can get social media stuff through there, right?
Yeah. And as I said, also the fact that you can integrate Zoom and you could do this meeting through it, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I say, with 2,600, there's
It could be used to start a coup d'etat.
yeah, up the revolution.
Priceless.
Guys, there seems to be a huge amount of sorry, I've tried Slack and used it with one guy that was giving me a hand a few years ago, but ultimately I didn't continue. I was a bit worried, if I'm honest, that it integrates with so much stuff. There's the possibility for so many things to be chatted about. I've no idea where the data is stored. It seems difficult to remove access from individuals and integrations with Slack. And I was just concerned from a GDPR point of view, what information was out there. Like the guy that I was working with had set up various alerts, like lead alerts that were coming through from a client website.
Yeah.
I was just very concerned on GDPR. Like it seemed an impossible task to manage, and I felt it put me in a position that I was kind of liable for it.
I mean, again, from your point of view, Manus, as someone on paid ads, there are integrations to Google Ads. Yeah, so privacy concerns. I think everybody's got privacy concerns about the web because there are a lot of hackers out there that will get your data, and you can get really scared about that stuff. But I haven't seen so much in terms of data leakage or issues around data. But I say for you, I think you can send Slack channel messages.
Hey guys, I gotta go. Best of luck to everybody. Have a lovely week. See you.
Cheers, John.
Hey, John.
Yeah, I think it is 11 o'clock almost now, so maybe we'll, on that note, maybe we'll close it down for today. Thanks very much, Chris. It was very interesting.
No worries.
Thank you.
Yeah, great to see you guys. See you next week
Thanks,
again,
Chris.
okay? Lovely presentation, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Great
all.
presentation, okay? It was really enjoyable.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Okay,
Chris.
take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, folks. Cheers, Chris.
Cheers, man.